go.
And now we haze.
Excuse me. Okay, so welcome and thank you. This is our December committee meeting for both Troops 162 and 5162. Our treasurer is not here to get us started with the treasury report. So I'll mention fundraising in just a few minutes. So maybe Christy will pop in a few minutes and we can circle back. And we also don't have Ellen for family scouting yet. So if they show up, somebody wave a flag and we'll go back to them. But I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to the membership and recruitment report. So we lost a scout recently. We just were notified that the Strong family is going to be transferring to Troop 870, and with recharter finishing and being posted, Troop 162 is now at 26 active youth, and 5162 is now at 6. Which, all things considered, and Lita can probably speak to this briefly, given where we're at in the pandemic, that ain't half bad. I mean, we're hanging in there. I know Amy's kind of trying to figure out the best way to both recruit and maintain the culture she's created in her troop, and I respect that. But we do have recruitment efforts coming up very soon. The young men have scheduled a hike for early January. I believe it was the 9th. And they've selected the Powerline Park to do that in over the next few days. I believe one of our scouts is going to create, I think it's your youngest, Diane, isn't it? Got assigned that? The flyer to send out Cub Scout packs. I have not heard back from Amy if the girls are going to participate in that or not. So that's TBD. So that I think is great. I hope it's successful. And I don't know if there's any support needed from the committee on that. I asked Joel if he and James if they need any support from this group of folks. Dave, do you have any insight if James feels like he needs support from the back end here?
No.
Okay.
I talked to him about it today. He knows that the adults are responsible for choosing a final location and setting up pop-ups and that kind of thing.
All right, sounds good.
Powerline Park is that, Mike?
Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Which Powerline Park is that?
I believe the one that goes down 160th, right, Dave?
Yeah, well, that's the key is where do you drop in and in what section do you hike and
start finish. Is it a loop? Yeah, what are we gonna do there? So
the area by the pool is not a bad place to set up.
That's exactly what I suggested.
I think Dave mentioned this. Yes.
My backyard, actually. I can see it from my bedroom.
How convenient.
Oh, yes.
Great.
Well, and so you're offering parking is what you're saying.
Sure.
So that's
the rec area has parking. It's a good spot to stage out of.
Yeah, I think that was a good option. I think one of the biggest things we got to figure out, and I'm not sure if anybody thought about this, but there isn't really a loop that I'm aware of to go down and come back a different route. So we may very well have a great idea with spacing these patrols in different groups by 15 minutes or so. But I think we're going to pass each other as we double back. So maybe, I don't know. I'll have to chat with Joel about that and see what he thinks. So that's coming up in early January. That's hopefully going to be very successful. I think hopefully we'll have some good weather. One of the things, and Joel's not here to mention this, and I just wanted to kind of touch on this very briefly because it is a program element, but the patrols are starting to feel a little bit imbalanced with, I know the Cool Cats have, I believe it's 11, and they're very active, whereas our Internet Explorer Patrol has, I think, 6 now that are moderately active. Diane, is that accurate? I think, is it 7, Daryl? 7 on paper?
Well, so here's the thing. Most of them do attend. Mr. Kibbe is kind of hit or miss, but he's at least 50%. And then I just now know the update with the Strong family. So, and let's see.
Well, the other one is Tinker's. He comes if there's something interesting he wants to do. So,
yeah, I always consider an Eagle Scout a privilege if we even have them, right? You know, and so he's 20% at
Yeah.
best.
Well, and I know that Andrew was going to try to delegate and have him come and do some patrol leader-ish type stuff, if I remember correctly, because I talked to Joel about this. Does that sound familiar, Diane?
Are you having internet connectivity?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me at all?
You're talking in robot.
I know. Sorry. I tried to make my
Yes.
Yeah,
computer
you just have a little bit of lag there, Mike, about 10 seconds.
You just have to
10
repeat that whole
seconds?
last sentence.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
gosh. I tried to make my computer the priority. Hopefully that'll help. So Diane, I know that Andrew tried to wrangle Mr. Tinker, young Mr. Tinker, into
Yeah.
doing some patrol leader type delegated things. Does that sound right? Was it
Yeah,
advancement related?
it does. What related?
Was it advancement related?
I honestly haven't seen Mr. Tinker for a few weeks.
Okay.
So, I mean, we have been working on advancement. I mean, we only have two kids that are two scouts that are below first class.
Right.
And at this point, and so I feel like our younger scouts are getting supported.
Good.
But I do also feel like if there's anyone that misses, like I'm speaking on behalf our family, I'm like, great, that's half the group, right? And there are some nights where I'm like, God, you know, my kids have a lot of homework. They wouldn't mind missing a time here and there. So there is that. Each week we have about one scout. I don't count on Mr. Tinker in it, but one scout that misses. It might be Judah. It might be Kibby.
Yeah.
And that's pretty typical.
So in talking to Joel about this a couple days ago, briefly, he's thinking about short of doing a complete reshuffle, he was talking about doing some sort of a strategic. A couple of scouts might get moved from one patrol to another with consent and with some forethought on who might be a good addition to that. If that doesn't work, we may look at reshuffling at some point, but it's on Joel's mind at the very least. So, and I know that with like the Cool Cats, I think they're at 11 if I recall correctly, and I think almost all of them show up consistently. Isn't that true, Dave?
Well, actually, it's about when we're virtual, we've been getting 9 out of 11 pretty consistently.
Okay.
So we're not.
Yeah.
Jasper's
Okay.
not at all.
Jasper doesn't do virtual.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right. And so he's not there, and neither is Caleb Ray. But everybody else is pretty much there most of the time.
All right. So that is where we're at for membership. Let's shift, unless anybody has any questions on that. So we shift to advancement. Daryl, you want to give us an update?
See, I've been talking to Joel. I did the end of the year JTE roles. So we had overall for the year, we had 16 scouts that went up a rank this year and 14 that did not. A couple of those moved and a couple of those have left. So of the scouts that are still part of the patrol, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 that are still active that did not go up a rank. Joel, I had a conversation with Joel, so he's going to reach out to those scouts and kind of have a extra Scoutmaster conference and kind of touch base with them. We've got the older list that he's going to get to first, and then he's got a tiered priority list kind of thing. Because we've got about 3 scouts: Caleb Bray, Caleb Kibbe, and Andrew LaRoche, that their window for Eagle is closing pretty fast. So if they're going to move on it, they have to move on it. Other than that, there hasn't been. We got a couple scouts that are working on Eagle that are getting merit badges. That are getting a couple merit badges done. Judah McCann, I think, just had a Scoutmaster conference or is working on Scoutmaster conference for Tenderfoot. So we have to get him a board of review. And Parker Pierce, I think, is really close to his Tenderfoot too. Right, Diane? Okay, she's so that's about where we're at with advancement right now.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
So before we move on, so Daryl, give Joel a huge high five and a huge kudos to following up with those scouts that are sort of lagging. As everyone may or may not know, Dylan's window has closed. And I think if the Scoutmaster continues sort of touching base with those older scouts to sort of see where they're at and why advancement is not happening for them, I think that would have gone a long way during Dylan's time in the troop, if that had happened for him. So please let Joel know that that is a huge, big fat thumbs up, and I love that he's doing that.
Okay. Yeah, it was it was my idea to begin with because it was really spurred by the JTE thing. It gave me something to look back and go, oh, who's actually moving and who's not. So he touched in base with those scouts that after I looked at that and said, hey, we need to do something about this.
Well, kudos to you then.
Well, Joel's doing the work.
So when you say the window is closing, do you mean like they've either turned 18 or they're like within 6 months of 18 and they haven't hit life, or what does that mean?
They're within a year and a half of hitting 18 and they've got some of them have a lot of work to do.
Okay.
So none of them have Eagle projects anywhere in the works. The closest, Caleb Ray is Star. Andrew LaRoche and Kibby are both first class. Kibby's like got one merit badge to finish for Star. So he's been sitting in the same spot for at least a year and a half.
I did talk with him. My impression is he has like 3 or 4 mini Eagle merit badges that are missing like 1 or 2 requirements because he did I think like a summer online academy or whatever those things are.
Mhm.
So I have connected with him about that.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't got any of that info from him as far as the summer academy, but I know he's been sitting on, I forget, like 1 or 2 of them. Like
Yeah,
one of the sit ones, he's been sitting on that, like 1 or 2 like just a couple of requirements for
Yeah.
a year and a half.
Oh, well, then he knows. I talked with him about, hey, let's set goals for those. So
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Daryl. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's discuss briefly. I'm going to pin myself here. The Quartermaster equipment type stuff. As it is currently, we still have patrol camping equipment that's dispersed out to each of our various patrols. It's not being used, I presume, but it's ready to go whenever we have the ability to get back out and do the things. Given that we are in a lockdown state right now, there probably isn't a lot immediately to do with patrol gear. All the troop gear is still in the trailer, and the trailer is still safe, and all that kind of good stuff. And one of the things that Mr. Hardman mentioned in an email just a few hours ago was that we do have the potential for building some shelves in the shed at Pilgrim Lutheran. And this was a project we entertained, I want to say it was close to a year ago, right, Dave? If I recall correctly.
Yep.
It was
exactly a year ago that we got the okay
access,
to do that.
Yeah. And then the pandemic hit and we never got around to doing anything about it. And right now in lockdown probably isn't the right time to ask a bunch of families to get together and build some shelves. But I wanted to open it up for discussion in terms of, is this the kind of thing, and Dave, I'll have you comment first and see if anybody else has any thoughts on this. Is this the kind of thing that we could have, say, a family adopt a shelving unit and, maybe have one family come in for a day and build a third of the shelves that we need to do. And then the next weekend, a different family could come in, or should we wait until this entire thing is cleared up and we can have more than one family at the same place. Thoughts on that?
Well, my sense is that it's a relatively simple project. I mean, it's going to look, it's going to be essentially like one side of the trailer. You got a set of shelves, maybe four high. You can construct them with 2x4s and plywood, and it's not a huge thing. My guess is that 2 adults could probably knock the whole thing off in not much time. And it could actually it'd be a little tough. Certain parts of it, you'd have to have multiple people in the shed at once, right? And that's the problem.
And that's why I wondered if a family with a couple of able-bodied adults that were willing to say, hey, I'll spend a couple hours in the shed one weekend and build, 4 feet of shelving might be a way to go. Or if it's just,
or you could have, maybe you have an older scout and a one or two inside, and then you could have somebody else outside cutting up pieces or whatever to length, right?
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
It could be as long as they were like in the same cohort, right?
And Lisa's mentioning service hours for a family that has a couple scouts. Does this fall into service hours?
It's for a troop benefit.
I guess it's troop benefit. Yeah, it's not individual benefit.
So, I mean, service hours for troop benefit only as a hindrance for Eagle projects, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's the way I've read it.
Right.
Okay.
And there are scouts that need volunteer hours. So.
Yeah, this is definitely though a lot. Power tools.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Measuring power tools and trying to keep everyone safe and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I sort of was thinking of this as mostly an adult project as opposed to a scout project, but older scouts could probably help out for sure. And it's not a big.
I'd love to do this. Learn how to woodworking and with adult supervision, but measuring, designing, implementing. I don't know. I think Damien would love it.
Okay, so here's my thought process on this, Dave. Could we create a page on the wiki with multiple phases? So the first phase would be, designing the thing. And I think phase 2 would probably be clearing out the space so that we could do this. And phase 3 would be, build day number 1, build day number 2. Could we do like a step-by-step wiki page and then have sort of a sign-up thing? Would that be possible? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be good to have an overall project manager for such an effort. And that way, how to break things down.
And I know that Joel was excited about getting going on this. He had some energy and enthusiasm. I'll ask him if he is of interest in doing that. That's kind of my current thought process. If we could kind of block this out into different phases, identify some days, and sort of do a sign up thing on the wiki. Any other thoughts? Go ahead, Dave.
I think it could work, and it's so for now we've got stuff in there. A lot of the Cool Cat gear is in there. And then there's also some troop gear in there too,
right? That
we had. I just didn't bring it back to your place because it was like the RC patrol box and Dutch oven and stuff like that.
I know there's some stuff there that we don't use on a regular basis as well. Some of the
there's a bunch of
extra stuff.
Some real dumpster ready materials in there.
Yeah. Okay, I put that comment in the wrong spot. Okay, so I'm gonna have a conversation with Joel about that. It's a great place for the shed is a good place for adult gear. You're right, Lisa. Okay, any other thoughts or comments on the shed equipment project before we move on? That's kind of where I'm heading with that. Going once. Daryl, is Heather around?
She's actually still working.
Oh, geez, late day.
She's on a phone. She's still on a phone call.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Like I noticed that Ellen has arrived.
Ellen has arrived. Oh, thank you, Ellen.
Hi.
How's it going?
I don't know.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, I'll come back to
but yeah, so where are we in the agenda?
We skipped past your stuff. We're going to double back real quick. Hey, Daryl, I'm going to come back to training in just a second. And so if Heather's off the phone by then we'll see if she wants to say something. If not, I'll just summarize. Family scouting related details, reports, thoughts, anything to share, challenges, ideas. Ellen?
I don't know.
Hey,
I'm sorry. I'm
are you
just
there?
barely here because you texted me. I'm not. I'm like drowning.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, right now it just feels like we're really disconnected. So I don't know. And we don't really have much in the way of families that are shared right now. But yeah, my mind's still shifting gears. So sorry.
Okay. I'll just say no report, and I'll chat with Amy about the disconnected feeling. That's fair. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Okay. Daryl, is Heather disposed or indisposed? Okay. It's all good. Let it pass.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's still talking.
Okay, so for all of you who did renew your youth protection training so that we could recharter, thank you. Everyone's YPT is at least up to date, and most everybody on both sides of the young ladies and the men's troops are trained. We have some people that have, especially in the assistant scoutmaster realm, need some training that isn't being offered right now. I'm not going to worry about it, but feel free to go and peruse any of the new Scouting U stuff. They keep coming out with new training elements and things. It's always good to go back and refresh and renew. So we'll just say no training report. YPT is up to date, and that's important. Okay, fundraising. The Wreath fundraiser is complete and was fairly successful. We supported a total of 3 units with over 500 total items being sold by both all 3 units. Troop 162 had 233 of those total. For Troop 162, the total net scout income was $2,867. So that was the profit that our scouts get in their scout accounts over everybody summed up, which is pretty good. Pack 162 and Pack 685 also participated. And so that's kind of nice. Uh-oh, my internet connection is unstable. I hope you can still hear me. Product pickup went fairly well, I think. I did my best to keep everyone separate and safe. And as a last tidbit, oh boy, bandwidth is low. As a last tidbit, if you can hear me, if anybody needs a wreath or a door swag, let me know. We have extras. Okay, with that said, Mr. Goey, do you have any thoughts on service projects?
No, we're just kind of waiting for the lockdown to ease. I don't know when it's going to be. I did hear that the governor extended the state of emergency for the state through March 2nd, but that's not the lockdown, obviously. But I think it's probably going to go through Christmas, I would imagine, and from Christmas gatherings. So I can't really figure out how to get people together when we're not even meeting for troop meetings.
Yeah, I agree with that philosophy. I think
So no other thought than that. Yeah.
right.
I know.
Go ahead, Ellen.
One thing. One thing I just remember, like sometime this week, one of my school counselors shared that they have a list of service opportunities that they're sharing with kids who like need to do something for their emotional health, like things that you can do and still be social distancing. So I could solicit them for that list and just see if it gives us some ideas.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, that's cool.
I know Saul's always doing like pickups that you can do those just with your family. And so those are always available if anyone wants to do
What are
it
those?
with their family. Solve. You go to solve.com. They've got how to do, family cleanups. So yeah, and there's options for doing those. But that's the only one I know of off the top of my head that's like that.
This is the time of year where Friends of Trees does, usually it's in February where they have those opportunities. And I imagine, I haven't checked the website out, but I imagine it's still happening because it's outside. But I don't know.
That's worth looking into.
Yeah, we did that last February, Friends of Trees.
Yeah.
I
was a
think
good
I did
group.
see that on Facebook too.
I know
Maybe.
my kids have been doing food box distribution with the church for hours.
Oh, cool.
And the food bank is still taking volunteers.
So which food bank is this? The Oregon Food Bank?
Yes.
Okay.
It's basically a lot of the volunteer organizations right now, they really need people to support them. It just means that if it may have to happen from an individually family basis if we're following the requirements. And as far as I'm concerned, if a scout takes a picture and you get your logged hours signed off, they're doing the best they can to do that.
In theory, it should be cleared by the Scoutmaster first, but as long
Yeah.
as that's the understanding, then I think that's fine. Yeah. And
Yeah, I do
providing,
know that the food bank isn't taking group reservations, which
Right.
is what we would need to do for the troop. But I think you can volunteer as an individual.
yeah, and I would encourage scouts if they wanted to do that to clear it with the Scoutmaster first, and then go ahead and do that at their leisure. I think that's fine, as long as that's cleared beforehand. So, and I think my internet's back a little bit here from the look of it. So one of the things I wanted to kind of plug your brain with, Mr. Goey, was it seems like over the next 6 months, we should be looking at coming out of this, not only the lockdown, but out of, the pandemic state, I hope, given that the vaccines are functional and work well and are able to get out. It might be a nice thing to have a couple of opportunities between now and say summer camp. We may have to be flexible with how we want to do that or what we do, but let's be thinking about a couple of service projects as we go forward. And then the first half of the year, something that we can do that kind of gets us back into that scouting spirit, Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whether it be the food bank or planting trees or another one we haven't done, and Lisa's saying it here is something for Pilgrim is a great idea. No registration. So yeah, let's roll those ideas around, and maybe next time we meet, can I come up with some thoughts? Because I think it's going to be a little bit before we can really do group things easily and well. But once that time is here, let's hit the ground running. I think.
Yeah.
Like to go back to being a service focused organization that we are. So anything else, Mr. Goey?
As far as the Pilgrim, that once the lockdown gets lifted, hopefully in the next month, we could do something maybe in January, because that doesn't require much of an advance notice or registration. We had a food bank scheduled for last spring that we had to cancel, and it just hasn't really opened up since then. So one, any of those that you have to register for, Friends of Trees or food bank, I think we're just gonna have to wait to see when they release the schedules and they're opening up for that. But Pilgrims would be easy to do.
And we worked with Dave. Who was our contact that you worked with to schedule that with Pilgrim? Was
Bob?
Well,
the facilities guy there is Bob Amon.
Right. Okay.
And he's he will find work for us to do, and it would be outside, of course.
Right.
But we had planned to do that work in the fall, but then we had all the smoke.
Yep.
Remember that?
Yep.
That was right before the plague of frogs.
Yeah. And it might be the kind of thing that if we go back to Bob and say, hey, we'd like to put something together, for an April timeframe, maybe, or whatever works, just to start putting the ideas
He's-
together would be good, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he'll be, I mean, with it, he'll probably just need a couple weeks of notice.
Sounds good. Yeah, my best premonition for what it's worth is it's going to be a couple months before we really start to see any movement. But when we do, I think it'll be nice to get back out and do stuff. So a little bit, right? So, all right. Thank you, Mr. Goey. Appreciate it. And since I don't have Mr. Vyers here, but Mr. Hardman and Mrs. Jancy, thought maybe you'd like to give us a really brief rundown of what your patrols are doing, how things are working out. And Dave, do you want to go first?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, we're getting pretty good attendance at our weekly meetings. Usually the minimum has been 8, but I think usually we get about nine scouts there. I have to say Parker is doing a great job of kind of being the MC of these meetings. He keeps it really light. He jokes around with everybody. He tries to get people engaged. Everybody seems to be having a pretty good time. And we haven't been going long. If things start to slow down, we just sort of move on. So the meetings have been running about an hour, not an hour and a half, which I think is about right. So that said, we've been doing program feature stuff, and that seems to go mostly okay. Keeps people entertained. We've been doing sort of advancement check-ins one by one, what are you working on? But my sense is most people aren't doing much outside of Nathan Williams is cranking away towards his Eagle, but everybody else seems to be kind of not doing a whole lot right now. We really do need to get some of the newer scouts, keep them moving forward, because I think that's a big part of the retention factor.
I agree. Is there something that we can do to encourage that?
Pardon?
In terms of working in the patrol meetings, is there something that we can do to encourage our scouts or our patrols to focus on advancement more, do you think?
It's harder virtually. I mean, we were doing it we were just clicking right along when we were meeting in person, because we would be able to knock off a trail to first class requirement every week, one or several. But now it's a bit tougher. We've done 1 or 2 virtually, but it's not quite the same. It's hard to get people. Some scouts don't want to say anything over Zoom. I mean, they might text a little bit, but you sort of miss that dynamic. So so it's sort of encouraging people on their own. Maybe it's going to be more one-on-one, maybe an older scout doing a Zoom meeting with a younger scout or something like that to get them motivated more directly.
Because the Cool Cats have, I want to say it's 4 of our newest recruits. Is that correct? Or is it, I think it's 4, isn't it? 5. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's keep our pulse on that. I know it's difficult with the virtual stuff. But like you say, I think encouraging that's good. Diane, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Thing is, I just said we haven't done much planning in terms of future campouts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Up in the air. So,
all right.
we had planned a Christmas party, but that's not happening.
Oh, so I'll start with the forward planning, and we haven't planned like our next adventure, our next camping trip. We've talked about maybe going a day up to Mount Hood and going snowshoeing or something like that. To tie into the program feature of the outdoor winter camping. I think that's what they're working on. I mean, to summarize our cohort, it's quiet. We have a lot of introverts in the group. And I was counting on my hand, we have about 5 that attend. My 2 kids, Andrew, and then Parker's pretty consistent. Judah is not much into the Zoom. And so it feels like there's a lot of quiet time. There's a lot of prompting that goes on. There's a lot of Andrew LaRoche. He has done a good job at following the program features and asking questions, but the dynamic of our group is we don't have scouts that really like I felt like we had a call on them. It's probably like my class is going to be next term, when you're asking questions, to see if there's interest. I think there is Zoom gloom in our group, and I'm speaking from my perspective, because I'm if I had my way with our cohort, I'd say let's meet 3 times a month, shorten our meetings, keep it really straightforward. We're covering the program features, but I think there's some homework burnout and there's some interest burnout. Like, what are we going to do with our time in our meetings? Even though we always find stuff to talk about, but and there's the dynamic is no one really wanted to be the patrol leader when we switched for that position, so that because they all I think are feeling like individually overwhelmed. So
yeah,
I mean, the new scouts are getting supported. I will say
Okay.
that. And the last time we met in person, which was what, September, October? I don't remember. They blend. We really went through a push of where people were with stuff. Seems like that part is as organized as it can be because we only have 2 new scouts that we're focusing on. They get all of our attention, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you have the opposite challenge of Dave, where the cool cats have now 5 of the first year scouts, and
yeah,
but the Internet Explorers have 2, but it is 2, right? I think it's 2, but everyone's very quiet, so it's a very different dynamic. It'll
well, and we may have, I don't know this for a fact, but 2 of those scouts are the scouts that are in the window for the Eagle you were saying, where they
Earl was talking about.
age
Yeah.
out isn't the word, but they and so that's our upper leadership that is potentially overwhelmed with maybe their individual advancement. I don't know that for a fact. But and Kibby does he does attend, but I don't know if it's the Zoom. He'll kind of show up late and so Zoom is a challenge, I feel,
I agree, absolutely.
as it is with everyone.
I know. Okay, well, it'll be interesting to see if Joel comes up with a really interesting solution to putting a little spice into the Internet Exploders. We'll see. A little enthusiasm. It seems like Andrew's been doing his level best to keep interest going, as far as I can tell, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would say that because being a presenter, because we've changed the role of patrol leaders. Now they
Yep.
are a presenter online, and he's doing, I think, remarkably well, because it's challenged him to work outside of his comfort zone, because he's a natural introvert, right?
Yeah, it's a growth area for sure. So, all right, thanks, Diane.
Yeah.
Let me ask Daryl, Ellen, or Mr. Goey, anybody feel comfortable doing a narwhals report on how they're doing? What's going on? Look up to the
I've only been to one meeting in like a month and a half, so Ellen would have a better idea than me.
I put, like, on the Trail to First Class stuff, I put a comment in the chat where, I mean, I think that is really helped Linus to have the program feature stuff. I like having that coming from the PLC is really giving him a little direction. But for Trail to First Class, I think like he would need specific guidance of like a sequence of things to work through, because when he's asked people what they need, they don't have their books handy, or they just, they know that if they said what they need, then that we would be doing that and not talking about Minecraft or something, right? So they just, they get off track easily. And like, I continue to think that he really needs guidance,
So
but wants to do well.
let me interrupt. I had sent out an email to, I guess, Hardin and also to Diane about, here's what I've been doing on the, you can print out a report where everybody is on an advancement. And then you just, it was real easy to say, well, here's like a half a dozen requirements that all these scouts need. And I just gave that list. I gave it to Parker and he was able to take it from there. Now he's a bit, obviously he's a much older and more mature, and he could talk about anything for an hour, I think, if he wanted
Right.
to. But you
Yeah, I
could
don't know that
structure
Linus could take that and run, but he hasn't gotten that information, and I would not regularly have time for that right now.
So if he gets some of that information, he might be able to make some decisions on advancement for this particular thing will be today, and then they might start checking stuff off, you're thinking?
Yeah, like when I talked to him, he seemed, because the furthest we got about talking about advancement was 2 patrol meetings ago. And they seemed to settle on that several people needed not related things, and that was something that could happen in Zoom. And so he kind of knew, like, okay, I have to have rope handy and we have to be able to go through knots. But then they last time they had too much other stuff to talk about. But even then, I don't think he had a specific plan. So just some guidance on, like, okay, people need this. How do you plan to help that happen? And planning it over Zoom is a lot different than the way he's seen those things taught before.
Daryl, is that something you could help with, making a report of some kind for Linus?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
If Ellen and Linus want to have a Zoom meeting, we can talk and stuff.
Okay.
Linus, waiting for Linus to get back to me anyways on merit badge stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Just one idea here is that because we're talking both basically about trail to first class stuff, and it's total number of scouts involved here is under 10, right? As long as we're doing this virtually, there's no reason why we can't mix the patrols for the young scouts in these patrols for like a not time activity.
Okay, so what you're proposing is going back
agree.
to sort of the troop guide methodology of, okay, everyone who needs this particular rank requirement can go into a breakout or whatever and knock that out with, say, Nathan Williams or somebody else who's a willing mentor. That's a great idea.
Maybe 1 week, instead of doing the normal patrol meetings, we just say, hey, we're just going to do, those people want to work on this stuff, you go into this breakout. I don't know.
I would almost go so far as saying, maybe, I put it in the text, our troop not God, which is Joel, who is like a freakazoid when it comes to knots. Does a knot tying demonstration or guideline for the whole troop, because as we all know, it's a one and done with knots when you're going through the trail to first class. But who can tie the knot the fastest and who has it done in front of their screen the fastest? I think it would be something.
Who can tie it one-handed?
Exactly.
Right?
I think it could be kind of a fun troop overall competition.
Who even remembers the knot still?
Yeah, right.
Yes, exactly. But I think it's I would be so far to say that maybe the troop as a whole could benefit from a troop tying session. Or not tying session.
I would second that, because that would be a way, like if we did once a month and met as a whole troop, then that could reinvigorate the internet exploders, because we have such a small group. And if we didn't have breakout sessions for one of the monthly meetings, and isn't Mr. Nathan, we always talk like he's going to be doing this for trail to first class thing. That could be, if they need a breakout, a time for that too.
Yeah, the theory is that Nathan is serving as the troop guide, so he's working in theory with the youngest scouts to help them with those rank advancement things. So yeah, I'll run this past Joel and see what he thinks in terms of, and he might have to talk about it with James to get that idea around, so James understands what it is that we're proposing here. But I think especially if this kickstarts a little bit more action on the advancement side, I think that's a good thing.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I think right now we're in danger of falling into a rut. So anything we can do to mix it up a little bit, I think would be welcome.
Speaking of
Yeah.
ruts, and since we're going into this kind of deep winter right now of not meeting, would they be interested in doing like one round of merit badges to break things up?
there was a lot
I have an idea.
of I was gonna say burnout on merit badges after I think July.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Dan's
What about
comment.
those scouts that are close to black reading?
In,
Those ones that we might lose? What is there a common thread with those Eagle ones that they need to finish? Maybe that's a way to get some of those older scouts that need those. I'm just throwing an idea out.
right, meet with a citizenship in the splat merit badge counselor and talk about what your next steps are. That's not a bad idea either. Yeah. Okay. Before I forget, I want to go over to Dan here and ask University of Scouting for practical merit badges. Yeah, exactly. Dan, I haven't heard much about the young ladies troop and what they're up to. Do you have any thoughts to share in terms of their meeting activities? Anything going on?
Hazel says they're doing merit badges just through the Zoom meeting. As far as I know, they're working on the art merit badge. Oh, and now they're starting cooking.
Right. I remember they were doing music a little while back when we were still able to meet in person. Cool. Okay. So Amy's keeping them going. Right. They got some stuff happening. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
And as
Yeah,
Leeds
they're still
mentioned
doing
in chat,
the Zoom
Amy,
stuff. I was just
go ahead.
Oh, I was giving my 2 cents. You guys were talking about the trail to first class, and I feel like I'm that guy in 872, but I feel like these kids are they're too cooped up. Anything that, like Scouts, we're an outside organization. Like if we could find a park with a cover, I know there's a lot of parks around that have, big covered areas that just whatever we can do to get the kids outside and then also having interactions with other kids at this time. I don't know.
Right.
I'm that squeaky wheel guy. I apologize, but
No, I think that's worth mentioning. We have to be careful about abiding by the governor's lockdown things. And I forget, even if it's groups outside of your family outside, there's limitations, but I think,
So I tried to ask this, right? Do we know if we fall under social gatherings or youth organizations? Because
we follow on we are chartered by a church. So we are we fall under their paradigm.
Yeah.
So we can meet as a bigger group.
okay. Yeah, that's worth thinking about. I think that would definitely be a patrol by patrol kind of thing if a patrol wanted to meet, or if we were going to emphasize advancement to have an advancement thing meet. Daryl, I see your hand is up. Did you have a comment to make, or was that
I already
earlier?
did it earlier. That
Okay.
was, sorry.
No, it's all
So
good.
I'm going to throw my 2 cents in along with Dan. I think, at a certain point, we talk about boy led, we talk about scout led. I think there's an opportunity for the committee to sort of come together and, something that we're talking about, a trail to first class, where in the organization and trying to pull it all together and make sure that there's enough workshops for all the youth available, really is too big for this, potentially too big for the scouts to put together. I think that's something that the committee could come together on and sort of say, hey guys, we're going to provide this opportunity so that you guys can just enjoy scouting.
Okay.
And the committee is here to support you. We want to help you advance, and here's an opportunity to make that happen. So, while it is boy led or scout led, I think there is an opportunity, we can take something like this and say, we want to help you and here's how we're helping you.
I hear you. Okay. I think we have to be careful not to step on, what am I trying to say here? I want to be careful not to take away the agency of the scouts and of our scoutmasters. Right.
So how you present this is you talk to Joel and you talk to James and you basically say, the committee would like to coordinate this effort and put together for you guys and, project manage a trail to first class or a troop activity where so you guys don't have to plan it.
Right.
You guys just can come and participate in it. So, yes, you need James' approval and you need Joel's approval, but that doesn't mean we sit on our hands waiting for them to ask us, because we all know the scouts are not going to ask us because they have no idea this possibility is available. So,
okay,
there's my
that's fair.
2 cents.
I'm gonna write that down.
Because most assuredly, that's what happens at summer camp.
That was the other thing. I did have something to say about summer camp. I don't know if is that on the agenda at some point in time? Further down, Mike?
We can be right now if you want. Why don't you talk about summer camp?
Okay. So I don't know if this is the place to go to, if it goes to the PLC, or maybe we talk about it here and then it goes to the PLC. At one point in time, it was talked about possibly supporting 2 summer camps, and especially maybe for 2021, that, we've got Fire Mountain already scheduled in primary, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's quite a few kids that wouldn't want to go to 2 summer camps this upcoming year because they were, to make up for last year and just to get out. So I don't know if we propose that, who proposes that and who spurs that idea of that, that kind of idea. And or I took one of the U of S classes was engaging older scouts, and was talking about local high adventures, and to help engage the older scouts. They encouraged everyone who was venturing age, whether you had a venturing crew or not, was to gather all of those scouts together and say, okay, you can do a high adventure activity, a local high adventure activity, and have a meeting just for those scouts and say, what do you guys want to do, and plan one just for them. Have them work on planning it so they have their own additional thing.
This would be something similar to them going to Philmont or going to Sea Base or something like that, but doing something locally as an alternative, right?
Yeah, like a 50 miler, because there's all of these groups that 50 milers around, like Rainier or in the Sisters or whatever. So doing something like that, or like a whitewater rafting trip, or something like that, but something high adventure. Get the kids that by summer will be 14, and up, and then say, do you guys want to do something? What do you want to do to help pull them in this crew? So I don't know if this is a place to get that started and then where it goes from there. I don't know if this is like instead of an extra summer camp, is you pick one of these ideas and you push one of them, or if you push both of them.
So to follow up on that really briefly, you could look at Fire Mountain as more of a high adventure summer camp, right? It's not, it's got the zip line, it's got a lot of stuff. It's more of a travel distance kind of thing, as opposed to something like Pioneer or Meriwether, where it's very close, it's very well known. and you know, it's massive dining hall that they feed you and all this kind of stuff, right? So I would think, and honestly, Daryl, I think it's the kind of question we might want to pose to, you know, the PLC through Joel, and ask the question, hey, is this something that you're interested in? Is this something that you know, you think, because you have to have buy-in from that age group, the 14 plus age group, that's what they want to do, whether it is a high adventure thing, whether it is, you know, going to a Fire Mountain and then having an alternative for the first year scouts, something along the lines of Pioneer or Meriwether, to ease them into the Scouts BSA program, you know, a little bit more of a gradual on ramp, right? I think that would be the idea. Am I reading you correctly on that? Those are the two things, one or the other?
No, not really.
Two
I was
different
just
things?
thinking two summer camps,
Okay.
you know, and if the kids want to go to camp twice, then they go to camp twice. And the crew could be sponsored instead of a second summer camp, or they could have those, you know, those three options. And I'm guessing most of the kids are going to pick, if they do that, would pick two. But I would really focus on one camp as this is our main camp for the entire troop, because I think the troop really, I saw that at Easton, saw that at Mary, you know, especially Easton the very first year, Meriwether. The troop needs to have, this is our summer camp. And then, hey, if you want to go to a second summer camp after this one, then this is something else. But I
So
think
are you thinking like an inner rover camp?
like,
So where it's a 162, two adults are willing to take a group of youth up to an inner
yes.
council
So
camp?
the second camp would be inner council, like Baldwin or Meriwether or Pioneer, like, you know, for a second inner troop rover. And if there's enough interest, then, you know, whoever wants to go goes. But, you know, Fire Mountain is our main summer camp.
Mhm.
This is where we encourage everyone to go to. And then if you want more,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do
That
we
was
have a
kinda-
sense that anyone else would be interested in that? To me, I kind of worry that, at least from the kinds of things that are being talked about among schools, like I think summer is still going to be tricky business for planning things with groups, even if camps are outdoors. And so I think
Well,
dealing with, you know, the regulations and the whatever is going to be going on, like dealing with that for two camps is just a lot of information tracking that I think it makes sense to just keep it simple, do one camp. And if, you know,
Well,
if
so
individuals want to join a camp, it would be fine.
yeah,
But
so I sat through the big discussion that oh gosh, Chris Harold, and it was Chris Harold, right, and Todd McDonald put
Yep.
on Wednesday about what's happening at CPC camps this summer, and they have a plan, and it's a very distinct, very clear plan. It involves cohorts. It involves wearing masks. It's the kind of thing, after I listened to it for about 45 minutes, I thought, okay, this is going to work. I think they've got it. And unless there's, you know, absolute tragedy with regard to, you know, the vaccine not working and, you know, some massive spike, I think it's going to be a successful summer. It's going to be, yes, more bandwidth and more mind, you know, more brain power is going to have to be put into how do I behave? What do I need to do to support these scouts during summer camp? You're right, but it's going to happen and it's going to work. And I feel fairly confident about that right now. I haven't heard from Mount Baker Council, obviously. I think they'll probably adopt some of the similar things that we're talking about last year. My biggest concern is that if we have a successful recruiting season for the young men, I think the young ladies, you know, wherever they go, they're just going to go and it's going to be fine. But for the young men, if they have a recruitment season where they have 10 or 11 Cub Scouts come in and half of them don't want to travel for whatever reason all the way to Fire Mountain, we're going to be at risk for losing a lot of those scouts. I don't know if
you know,
that'll
Mike,
happen.
the
Go
year
ahead,
that
Daryl.
they went to Easton, there was no one that didn't want to travel that far. Everyone went.
Yeah, but this is different. So, I mean, you all, anyone who doesn't know me, you all know me at this point. I think a rover session, and there are more than one troop within what was Sunset Trail that would have a group that would go out, but they would also have a group that stayed in. So, while it's not our paradigm, especially in the land of where we're hell, let's just face it, this is hell. I think it's possible, there's to create an opportunity, and it's really hard to take off this damn hat, really hard taking this DE hat off. But if for some ungodly reason I don't have a gig, I would take kids to camp, because getting kids to camp is important. And if that means, yeah, I mean, 2 different sessions so that kids can get to camp, I think it's worth creating the opportunity. If no one takes the opportunity, that's one thing. But if we don't give them the opportunity, then we've shut the door on them.
I think it's clear to me, at least for the past couple of years, we've had more than one scout that has not attended summer camp because it didn't work for them schedule wise. It wasn't the camp they wanted to go to, or you name it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw that idea across Joel at some point over the next near future, and see what his thought process is. And if he's amenable, then maybe he'll take it to James and the PLC to see if that's something that makes sense. And Daryl, maybe you're right. Maybe it, going to Fire Mountain and having all of our new scouts have this grand adventure all the way up to Washington is actually going to help with retention. I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is, and I don't necessarily have all the right answers. So, but I'm willing to entertain the possibility. Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, I just think we should do both. Have the grand adventure, make that the most, that this is plan A. If you want extra stuff, you do, this is the extra stuff.
Right.
That was just my version of it, is have a main focus, have a second plan,
Well, I like that idea. I know, I mean, we're a family with 2 scouts. We would never do both, because that would be we would never be able to afford 4 camps, right? But
Right.
well, but like the Williams family, it is hard when you have multiple, and I have a kid that's going to do horse track next summer too, so that may be his priority. But it is good to have the option. The only disadvantage or the fear when we were going to do that one of those years was kind of pulling some of the, like splitting the group, if you will. And I like how you phrase it, where this is our primary group, and there may be kids that have sports or conflicts, and usually it's the parents that get involved, and they are the ones that spur on the second rover group, right?
So, the narrative that it pulls kids away from another camping experience, I'm going to, excuse my crassness, I'm going to shut that down, because that's not what happened. There were kids that were not going to go to camp, period.
Right.
And we were creating an opportunity for them to go to camp.
Yeah, I think you're right, and the narrative is important. The narrative being, and like Daryl said, this is our primary, and if you want to go to this over here for whatever reason, especially if it's extra and you really want to work on those Eagle required merit badges, then great. And I think that being the primary narrative is probably key to getting that past a few of the folks that really want our entire troop to go to one summer camp a year. Does that summarize what you're thinking, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you want, so like for Dylan, poor Dylan, he gets shrugged along. He was never going to go to Fire Mountain that year.
Right.
Or, and so, or, this last year, even though it didn't happen, there were a number of kids that were never going to go to camp if that opportunity had not been available to them. Right. And actually, Diana, you and I had that scenario where we were creating this opportunity because we knew those particular, our youth weren't going to join the troop as a whole.
Yep.
And so, we really need to take care on how we word this. It's a matter of, if you cannot do A, B is an option. We want to keep B as a possibility.
Yeah.
And if you want to go to A and B, whew, more the merrier.
Awesome. Right.
But the piece that we need to keep in, we only need 2 adults to make it happen.
Yeah, I'm
Two-
not
two
seeing
willing
much
adults.
disagreement here. Seems like everybody's arguing the
Yeah.
same point, so.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, fair enough. Good point, Dave.
okay, given that our Amy and Joel aren't here this evening to give us Scoutmaster reports, and we are just over an hour into this, I'm going to go ahead and ask for any final comments or concerns at this point before we wrap it up. Anybody have anything to go over more than we have already, or anything additional?
Well, I'd like to eventually loop into the treasure report, because I know as a ASM, I don't know what sort of latitude we have if, like, let's say we want to do a skating event next month. What is the budget for that? And, those pieces, because, yeah, that's the stuff I'm interested in.
Okay,
And that relates
so
to the treasure report.
so
right?
right, so Christy couldn't make it this evening, and she said that she'll do a pull together a report tomorrow, and I'll fold it into the meeting minutes I'm creating here. I do think that I can answer part of your question, because this has been running around in terms of the fact that, hang on, I'm going to mute a few people that are noisy here. Sorry guys. Okay, so well, Diane, you don't have to mute yourself. You're the one who's asked the question. So we had this notion
Talk too
of
much.
we had this notion of, okay, in years past, the troop has covered some expenses, and some examples of that were the turkey camp out, and there were a couple other things that were really special that were, we really wanted to encourage everyone to go to, or I think there was a climbing thing that the troop covered some of the expenses on that, just to keep the cost down per scout, right? And the question came to Christy, because Christy took this over, just less than a year ago, I think now, from Mr. Tinker, of, what is the budget? Exactly what you're asking, Diane. And what we came down to it right now is there's no hard and fast rule on the troop pays for this, doesn't pay for that. There's this budget, there isn't this budget. I think if there's something that your scouts want to do and they would like some troop support, I think it is on the ASM, in this case you, Diane, to reach out to Christy and ask the question to her of, hey, the scouts want to go do this thing. Is there anything we can do to get some troop support from that in terms of funding? I will say that we just wrapped up fundraising, and it went very well for the scouts that participated. It went 0 for the scouts that didn't participate. So there's that, right? But to go back to what you were asking, there isn't a line item in the budget for patrol activities at this time. And, we kind of went back and forth on whether that's a good idea or not. And I don't think it's been really resolved. So at this point, it should be sort of a direct question based on the plans that they would like to do. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And also, to clarify a point earlier in this meeting, we fall under the umbrella of the church numbers if we were to get together and go somewhere. Like if our cohort of more than 6 people is just our, which that's the governor's violation, right?
Right.
So I guess what I'm asking is, currently right now, doesn't matter. We can't do anything based upon the governor's mandates, right?
Yeah, I think that's
That is correct. You have to follow. Yeah, you have to
And then
follow
the
state
6
guidelines.
person, 2 families, the CPC, all those guidelines. But dreaming a little in mid-January, because I'm an optimist. I dream for the day
Somebody's
when we
got to
all
be the
meet
optimist.
again. Well, this Zoom thing's gonna lose me, right?
Yeah, I know.
So because I Zoom all day, I
Mhm,
want to hike all night, right? So came out bad, but anyways, when the governor's restrictions subside, then we could, in theory, go with our cohort and adult, I'm saying 15 people, and do something, like skating or
Yeah,
whatever.
and as soon as we're out of this emergency lockdown, whenever that is, it's going to fall back to whatever we were in before, I think, in that,
Yeah.
if you're inside,
Yeah, well.
there's a limit there. If you're outside, there's a different
No,
limit.
it's not.
It's not?
That's not how it is.
Was it completely
'Cause
rewritten, or it wasn't a
it
layer
was
on top of a
completely
layer?
rewritten. So
Okay,
like
so
right now we're not, so the emergency shutdown that was from Thanksgiving till like the 3rd of December, that's over. And now we're closed down because we're extreme high risk. And the things like there's extreme high risk, and then there's high risk, and then there's moderate or whatever, like the numbers of people change by those, but those are
Okay.
all laid out already. There's not like a new guideline that's going to come out.
okay.
They like set those.
Until a new guideline comes out. I mean, which very well might be the
I
case.
mean, they deliberately made that long term, and so I think it's
Okay.
intended for that to be the thing you can plan on until the vaccine takes, hold of things, which
Okay.
is a lot further out.
So it's worth watching those.
So like that's why I was asking before, like what we fall under, because by the way I read things, it looked like we might have to get to low risk to really get back to what we were doing before. When I feel like people are kind of waiting for just the extreme high risk to get let up. And so like I feel like we need some clarification on that from council.
Yeah, I agree. I
agree.
need to understand that more. It's obvious that right now we can't do anything in person, and we shouldn't be. And that goes back to the whole scout is obedient thing, right? But as things progress, I think we need to understand it more, and I need to understand it more so that we can act on that. So
right, yeah,
Dan,
and
that's a
it's
good
like
point.
I think at a certain point we want to be obedient, but we need to like understand the rule that we're trying to
Yeah.
obey.
Yo, you're right.
Well,
you're
and
right.
they change,
And it's pretty complicated because you could see us fitting in like 3 different ways, and it's like you don't necessarily just want to go the letter of it, you want to like go to the spirit of the thing. Like right now I feel like we kind of are in agreement that like, well, the spirit of it is like if it's not 100% necessary, don't do it. So that's pretty easy to understand, but after this extreme risk, I think it gets a lot harder to understand.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
agree.
the thing to keep in mind is so long as we're following state guidelines and keeping in mind that our chartering organization is a church, that's, and a lot of this comes into risk and liability. And what happens if someone gets sick, and will the insurance kick in? We don't want people to get sick. So, but, we can't completely control that, and except all hiding in our houses. So long as we're following state guidelines, insurance supports us. The minute we stop and we ignore the state guidelines, then our insurance doesn't kick in.
Right. Then we're at risk.
Yeah.
So, and then we're at risk of personal liability.
Right.
So yes, we have to follow state guidelines, but we do have the benefit of our chartering organization being a church. And
Yeah,
they're the
but
piece.
the church, the guidelines for churches for youth activities are different than the guidelines for congregational activities. And so there's still a weird gray area.
So it's still state guidelines, and we still have to follow them.
Right.
So
and they're hard to understand. So that's what I'm saying is like
can I jump in
we
here?
we either need to understand or we need someone to tell us.
Can I jump in here? Because I went all through this because we were talking about this recruiting hike in just a couple of weeks, right? It's like, can we even hold this thing, right? And so I sent Mike and Joel an email about it, but my understanding is I looked at just the youth guidelines, the new youth guidelines for the state, and it says as long as you're outside doing some outdoor activity, you're socially distanced and spaced, and that's all okay. There weren't restrictions on number of people that I saw on that particular thing, but that's when we're all separate. right?
Right.
But as soon as you get into any kind of stop in one spot for any period of time, you're restricted down to a much smaller group. So
Interesting.
and I would worry about, do you think the council's okay if we say, well, we're a church, so we can have more than the 6? I'm a little bit nervous about their insurance.
So, so everything, and I can only speak to as of November 15th.
Well, change, I'll change since then.
Well, exactly. So, I mean, but ultimately the mantra was follow state guidelines. If you're following state guidelines, then the insurance is fine.
Okay.
If you do not follow the state guidelines, then you are at risk of the insurance not kicking in. So that's, that ultimately, and of course, follow up, whoever wants to follow up with I have not visited CPC's website since November
say anything.
15th.
It doesn't say
Well,
anything.
no, which means that, and, talk to Eric Martinez and say, hey, when's the newest update coming from with the whole new guidelines? Because, it's like I got those all the time. But ultimately, so long as we're following state guidelines, the insurance will kick in. The minute you break state guidelines, all bets are off. I've seen troops, and this is with me having put on hiatus my scouting account. I've seen troops meeting. I don't know why they're meeting, because it is not within state guidelines. So they're putting themselves at risk. And they're also putting their chartering organization at risk.
Yeah.
So that, that's the other piece that we need to put into play here, is talking to Eva and saying, how does the church feel about this? What is the church youth group doing? Because if the church youth group is not meeting in person, then maybe we shouldn't be meeting in person, so that we don't put the church at risk. Because ultimately, and this is going to be more important as we continue forward, because I don't know if you guys caught on that, other councils are opening up and becoming chartering organizations. Because
Yeah, I
more
heard about
chartering
that.
organizations are probably going to be, our CPC is not doing it at the
Not
moment.
surprised.
But chartering organizations are starting to step away because they don't want to be at risk.
Yeah.
So we have to balance that a lot.
Yeah.
So, but
Well, I will say-
ultimately, so long as we follow state guidelines.
Yeah. So for what it's worth,
done.
going through the recharter process, I feel like our chartering organization and our chartered org rep are very supportive of our units. I feel good about that. So that's where I'm at. Okay, we've beat that horse to death. Any other? Thank you, Lisa. And Diane, I hope we answered your original question. Any other thoughts or comments? Final call before we adjourn.
One more thing.
Go ahead, Diane.
When we start when the world opens up, because I'm the dreamer, is the
Okay.
council ever, how are they going to announce the rollout, and when can we start thinking about reserving at council campgrounds?
So
Because if
as
they're
of
talking
today,
about summer
no, as of today, all council properties are still closed, I believe.
camp,
Lisa, any thoughts on that? Yes, no, I think they're all closed.
Lord knows.
yeah.
Listen,
I
I say
mean, right
call-
now, fat chance right now, but I'm talking like in 2 months when the vaccinations, I think I dream of things moving maybe quicker than other people are thinking. And then all of a sudden we start hitting herd immunity, like dream big, guys. And
So
in March, when are we going to be able to even camp in the own council? You can't
So-
even reserve a state park
So
camp.
here's my educated guess. And this is based off of what the camps experienced during the cohort camping. And maybe okay, I'll filter myself. It was a show, and it wasn't a pretty show when it came to cohort camping.
Yeah.
And units that came in and did cohort camping with only 1 or 2 patrols were fine. But when an entire troop hit the camp, it was a show and it was ugly. And it's high maintenance, and it is not something that, you know, they would, it's not good.
Yeah.
So their desire, you know, those people who are physically running the camps, it takes a lot more human power to be able to provide that opportunity, because people are not following the rules.
So my guess is,
So I would be
when-
surprised.
yeah, when we get back to a point where council is willing to open up their properties and have groups come back on, we're going to hear about it a lot. And I suspect Lisa's right, because they shut that down fairly quickly, especially as Clark and Merriweather were just done, and they let a couple other ones tail off. But when they're ready to have us come back, they'll let us know. Is my guess, for what it's worth. I know it's tough, and I want to go camping too. And maybe we look at doing some backpacking or something where we're going into some place where it's not, a site you have to reserve.
This will be for future discussions, right?
Oh, sure, yeah,
When the world
definitely.
when the world opens up, now how do we get back to normalcy, right? And
I
mean,
think it's going to
as
be a rocky road between here and there.
yes,
And
it will. And I mean, even as of today, you can't even reserve more than a month out at any state park.
Yep.
And that's yurts are probably still out. I mean, so we're restricted. Same thing that we talked about 3 months ago.
Yep.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind as we go through this rough patch, you know, the resiliency that our kids are going through and that we're all going through is going to give them much more strength and resilience as adults. So while it's difficult, you know, having gone through difficult times as a kid, the things that I've gone through as an adult, I probably would not have handled if I had not learned coping skills as a kid. So our kids are getting a lot of, you know, okay, sometimes it's Doritos and Dr. Pepper, but there are coping skills that we're hopefully teaching our kids as we go through this.
Yeah.
So, you know, they will become on the other side of this much stronger than if they had never gone through this.
It's a painful process getting there, though.
Unprecedented character building. I've heard that in a lot of it. But
okay. Anybody else? Any thoughts or comments to share before we turn the recording off? All right. Thanks for those watching on YouTube. That's our meeting.